Welcome to the Jehovih Chronicles with your host, Cosmoncal.
Right back at it. Like I left something, you should hostess with the most is on fire, like the toast is. Your naga, your nerve. Fresh up off of that curve, jelly jam and preserve. Big Chief Cloud Kicker himself, Cosmonium. Right back in, and this is Jehovah Chronicles number 198, Governmental Gangsterism. We're going to be looking at some of the actions, deeds, nature, and character of our United States government. Now, in this bill, we're going to get into some of the actions done by the United States government, namely assassinations. But before we get into that, and to show how the assassination, right, the act of having it being tried upon you and actually you pulling off assassinations shows the spiritual depravity and how far your government is away from its intention and how far it is away from the ways of the Creator. It's like a symptom, right? Assassination is like a symptom of an evil government. It's a way to show that it's not right. So, but before we go into that, let's take a quick look into Speed, the book of earth, sky, and spirit, into the book of Su. The book of Su, chapter 3, verses 3 through 6. And it reads, I have created two states, therefore open to all men, both on the earth and in atmosphere, which are the heavens attached to earth, which are liberty and bondage. I'll repeat it again. I have created two states, open to all men, both on earth and in the lower heavens, which are liberty and bondage. And I made man to choose that which he will. You going to be free or are you going to be a slave? It's up to you. But so that he might not err, so that man might not err, behold, I sent my emancipated angels to explain these things beforehand. Even so, are governments ordained by my holy ones. Accordingly, you may judge whether a government is of me or against me. Let that sink in. You may judge whether a government is of me or against me. For this is how you know if it's for good or for evil. For if it gives liberty to all righteous works and for the promotion of knowledge, providing teachers to the extent of the demand, it is of me. But if the government makes of itself a self, ain't it a corporation? Aren't corporations literally people or selves? But if the government makes of itself a self, for which its aggrandizement is at the expense of my children's liberty, then it is against me. If a government makes itself a self for which its aggrandizement is at the expense of my children's liberty, then it is against me. For, look what it says, for I have not created a people to be today as their fathers were, but provided them with perpetual growth in wisdom and virtue, for which reason the rising generation shall rebel against that which was well and good for their forefathers. All my governments understand this, whether on or in heaven. Whatever government does not accept this rule shall go down to destruction. Listen up. For as I have hedged man about with signals such as pestilence, poverty, hunger, in order to awaken in him knowledge and industry, so I have hedged in all governments under the sun with sentinels such as rebellion, assassinations, war, and bankruptcy. Oh, listen, y'all. As pestilence proves man's disobedience to my commandments, so do rebellion and anarchy prove the disobedience of governments to the progressive spirit which I created with man. The self-God says, listen, is your country running like this? Pay close attention. The self-God or the false God says, I will make a strong government. By armies and cruel masters, I will bind the subjects in my dominions. And he draws up a multitude of laws and heaps up books to explain the laws and find judges to explain the books that explain the laws. And he says, behold, how wise I am. Behold, the great wisdom of my judges. Behold, the great learning of my books. Behold, my most perfect laws. Behold, my armies that stand in great power behind all. But lo, listen, I meant to read 7 too. I meant to put that down there, 3 through 7. Let's go down here a little bit. But lo, a star appears in heaven. Your blue beam, whatever, right? That sky crack. A star appears in heaven, and all his fabric gives away like a spider's web. For instead of choosing his creator, who is strong, he erected things that were as nothing. Now, with that being said, I want to turn the attention now to every leader the U.S. has assassinated. Now, there are some off of here, like Malcolm X and Martin Luther King and other ones, but we wanted to get into some of the ones you probably didn't know about. Check this video out, man. This is your government, huh? We're going to expose it. Jehovih Chronicles, number 198, Governmental Gangsterism. Let's go.
Hi there. Today we're diving into the shady world of the assassinations carried out by the CIA. For decades, the US has been pulling strings behind the scenes, changing the fate of countries and their leaders, often in brutal ways. We'll check out some key figures who met their end thanks to these covert operations. Let's get started. On January 17, 1961, Patrice Lumumba, the first elected prime minister of the former Belgian Congo, was brutally murdered. Following the Watergate scandal of the Nixon regime, a U.S. Senate committee uncovered CIA plans to assassinate Lumumba as part of a broader strategy to support Joseph Mobutu, who would go on to rule the Congo for 3 decades and not be assassinated. The CIA, founded in the late 1940s, quickly gained a reputation for its covert operations aimed at neutralizing leaders and overthrowing governments the U.S. perceived as threats to their interests. During the Cold War, the agency engaged in various subversive activities to prevent the spread of communism, often resulting in the overthrow or elimination of foreign leaders. This included targeting Lumumba, who was seen as dangerously close to Soviet influence. with a growing momentum for nationalization, collectivization, and general legal overhaul mostly targeted at the massive mineral wealth of the country, which would greatly benefit the Congolese people to the detriment of Congo's exploiters. The US swiftly aligned with the Congo's former colonizer, Belgium, to oppose Lumumba and what he stood for. On September 5, 1960, President Kasavubu dismissed Lumumba, a move backed by the CIA, which had provided funding aimed at bolstering anti-Lumumba efforts. Despite Lumumba's attempts to secure UN protection, the CIA initiated direct assassination attempts as soon as he was dismissed, with the conspirators cooperating very closely with the CIA and their Belgian advisor friends to sell their country out to the US. Lumumba's capture and imprisonment was a coordinated effort between the CIA supported Mobutu and Belgian-backed secessionists. He was taken to Thistle prison, where he was brutally treated, as you'd expect from the sadists at the CIA. Belgian advisors and Congolese authorities transferred Lumumba from Thistle prison to Katanga prison because they feared that his influence could spark unrest. The transfer sealed his fate, evidenced by the fact that when CIA Congo Station Chief Larry Devlin learned of the transfer, he said of Lumumba that his goose was cooked. Yet another stupid Americanism. Besides his influence, which moving him might contain, the only way to keep him from returning to power, their real fear, was to kill him. In 1975, the US Senate's United States Senate Select Committee to study governmental operations with respect to intelligence activities, a dogshit fucking name, better known by its nickname, the Church Committee, named after the senator, the head of the committee, opened an investigation which publicly concluded that while the CIA took steps towards assassinating Lumumba, it was ultimately his Congolese rivals who executed him. I said publicly because the investigation's actual conclusion and evidence showed the CIA's deep entanglement in Lumumba's murder, contradicting the original public statement of passive involvement. They tripped and fell into a coup, is what they're trying to imply. Statements from key figures involved and declassified documents highlight the US government's direct responsibility in Lumumba's murder. Lumumba's assassination is an excellent example of the US's insecure need to intervene in the politics of other nations to the point of murder, all for the interests of their foreign policy, which is guided by capital. This doesn't only extend to so-called enemies, however. On November 2nd, 1963, Ngo Dinh Diem, the president of South Vietnam, was assassinated in a coup backed and basically directed by the US government via the CIA. The Pentagon Papers revealed that President Kennedy knew and approved plans for the military coup that overthrew Diem. Diem was seen as a crucial ally against the spread of communism in Vietnam. The US policy of supporting South Vietnam's struggle against the Hanoi-backed Viet Minh insurgency hinged on Diem, who was regarded as the only leader capable of unifying his people. Despite this vital importance to US policy in Vietnam, Diem's increasingly autocratic rule, directly subsidized by the US, and failure to address widespread grievances are the standard reasons given for his downfall. His handling of the Buddhist protests in Hue on May 8, 1963 was a catalyst for his removal. The brutal suppression of this demonstration ignited widespread opposition within the country and abroad, revealing deep-seated political frustrations that existed in the background. The US made repeated attempts to persuade Diem to address the Buddhist grievances and restore public support, but he remained obstinate. By August 1963, the US began covertly supporting a group of South Vietnamese generals planning to overthrow Diem. The Pentagon Papers detail how the US maintained contact with the plotters, provided intelligence and tacit approval. Ambassador Henry Cabot Lodge played a pivotal role ensuring the coup's success by providing important information about pro-Diem forces and approving CIA participation in the coup's tactical planning. Lodge even sought Washington's approval to fund bribes for officers loyal to Diem to ensure their cooperation with the coup. The decision not to thwart the coup was based on the belief that a new government could manage the war effort better than Diem's administration. As the coup unfolded, the US actively facilitated its execution, emphasizing the importance of continued American involvement in the coup, as acknowledged by the Pentagon Papers. And despite the US's effort to distance itself from the violence, documents made it clear that American involvement was crucial to Diem's overthrow. What replaced him was even worse for the Vietnamese people, which is unsurprising because the US didn't have their interests in mind when carrying the coup out. Thankfully, the Viet Minh won in the end. On September 11, 1973, 28 years before the attack in the US, a violent US-backed dictator took over Chile, bringing upon the country decades of terror. Besides being the most significant event in modern Chilean history, the overthrow of President Salvador Allende was not a spontaneous uprising, but rather a carefully planned operation planned by the CIA under the Nixon regime. Allende's democratic election victory in 1970 made him the first Marxist president in Latin America and was a direct challenge to US interests in the region, according to the US itself. His policies of nationalization and wealth redistribution threatened American business profits in Chile, particularly in copper mining. This economic shift was perceived by the US as a move to the dreaded Soviet communism, which caused Americans to intervene. In response, Nixon and his national security advisor Henry Kissinger devised Operation Fubelt, aimed at destabilizing Chile and Allende's government. Kissinger famously said, "I don't see why we need to stand by and watch a country go communist due to the irresponsibility of its people. These issues are much too important for the Chilean voters to be left to decide for themselves.
Dang.
Democracy only when it suits them, meaning suits the interest of the ruling class." This operation involved both economic and political strategies to create a pretext for a military coup. The directive from Nixon was clear: to make the economy scream and generate social unrest that would justify military intervention, the typical American playbook with sanctions. It should be clear that you live in a rigged game at this point. Obviously, the CIA's involvement would be and was central to this plan. Their strategy, divided into Track 1 and Track 2, focused initially on attempting to prevent Allende's inauguration through political means, including bribing Chilean congressmen. When this approach failed miserably, the focus shifted to Track 2, which involved supporting military dissidents and engaging in economic sabotage. The CIA funded anti-Allende propaganda, supported strikes, and orchestrated protests to simulate domestic discontent. A critical element of this operation was the elimination of General René Schneider, the Chilean army's commander-in-chief. In short, his adherence to constitutional legality posed a significant barrier to the coup. The CIA's plans to kidnap him resulted in his assassination, an event that cleared the way for the coup by removing a key obstacle to military intervention. The US had successfully orchestrated an invisible blockade by freezing Chilean bank accounts in the United States, halting new loans and credits, and pressuring European countries to do the same, severely restricting the Chilean government's ability to import essential goods and access foreign currency. Basically a mini version of the embargo Cuba has been under since the 60s. Additionally, on October 11, 1972, truck owners supported and funded by the CIA initiated a nationwide strike that paralyzed transportation across Chile, causing significant disruptions in the supply chain, food shortages, and escalating inflation, which was brilliantly managed to some extent by the success of Project Cybersyn, a computer planning effort which greatly reduced the potency of the strike via data organization and coordination. The CIA also provided at least $1.5 million to the newspaper El Mercurio so that they would publish anti-Allende propaganda. And worst of all, the CIA funded the paramilitary group Patria Libertad, which on October 1, 1973, carried out a bombing of a train carrying copper to sow chaos and undermine the government. The coup resulted in the brutal dictatorship of General Pinochet, which lasted for 17 years and which Chile still suffers the consequences of to this day.
Dang.
Back to the video in just a minute. Let's hear from today's sponsor, Incogni. Did you know that according...
All right, we're going to fast forward a little bit. Right? We're going to fast forward this a little bit and get right back to it, y'all.
Between Salvador Allende's election on September 4th, 1970, and his inauguration 2 months later, the CIA launched a major covert operation to prevent him from formally taking office, as I mentioned earlier. Ordered by Nixon and overseen by Kissinger, Schneider's death was beneficial to the overall plot against Allende. Kissinger successfully persuaded Nixon to approve this covert destabilization policy by arguing at a National Security Council meeting that the developments in Chile had major historic importance and far-reaching consequences, particularly for the interests of the United States. Despite the CIA's plotting and general fuckery, Salvador Allende took office. However, because of General Schneider's staunch opposition to a military coup, right-wing officers and CIA agents planned to assassinate him. Their plan was to kidnap him from his home, fly him to Argentina, with another general afterwards announcing that he had disappeared. The military would blame the kidnapping on leftists and would institute a search for Schneider in all of Chile, using the search as a pretext to raid communist or working-class neighborhoods. The military command would be shuffled to put coup plotters in positions of power, and a new military junta would be installed, headed by Admiral Hugo Tirado. The junta would dissolve Congress and eventually finish the coup. Well, what happened? Schneider's personal vehicle was deliberately struck and stalked by a jeep as he drove to his military headquarters in Santiago. 5 individuals surrounded his car, and one using a sledgehammer to break the rear window, and Schneider was shot 3 times at close range. Despite emergency open-heart surgery, he died on the morning of October 25th. Following his death, the CIA gave $35,000 to members of the hit team to buy their silence about contacts with U.S. government personnel. So
It's a dirty game, y'all. Right? They gave $35,000 to the members of the hit team for putting in the hit on this man. They was just supposed to kidnap him. Or so they say. The government is a hitman. Let that sink in.
basically hush money. An internal CIA inquiry in 2000 confirmed they provided weapons and advice to groups plotting Schneider's murder. The classified documents show the CIA understood its operation had the full backing from the White House, even as it drafted self-serving postmortems about the Schneider killing to distance itself from the culpability. These documents show that while the murder might have been unplanned, it was certainly not unforeseen, since on 2 occasions CIA conspirators raised the possibility of Schneider's death. The CIA's initial reaction to the shootings reflected in the cold-blooded cable traffic between the station and headquarters, which indicated uncertainty about who was responsible but offered hope that the conditions were now ripe for a coup. Rafael Trujillo seized power in the Dominican Republic in a 1930 coup d'etat, enjoying enthusiastic support from the US for nearly 30 years. During his rule, he used torture and mass murder to suppress dissent, and the US, of course, didn't object or intervene on behalf of human rights. In return, Trujillo became a staunch supporter of US policies in the United Nations. However, as Castro's revolutionary army appeared poised to take over Cuba, US became concerned that his violent behavior might spark a similar revolution in the Dominican Republic, so the obvious solution was for the CIA to begin plotting his assassination. By mid-April 1960, President Eisenhower had approved a State Department memo explaining what was to be done in the event that he fled the country, was assassinated, or overthrown. The United States prepped to send warships or ground troops to the Dominican Republic to prevent a Castro-type government from taking power. The plan included efforts to persuade Trujillo to step down and establish contacts with civilian and military dissidents who would provide moderate pro-US leadership. Despite multiple attempts to convince him to step down, he refused all offers of a comfortable exile, famously stating he would not leave unless taken out on a stretcher. And, well, since he was so determined to stay put, the Eisenhower administration began considering the more violent options. On May 30th, 1961, 7 Dominicans ambushed and assassinated him near San Cristobal. The assassins, including disgruntled military officers, caught him on a lonely stretch of road and riddled his body with 27 rounds. To make sure he was extra dead, I guess. Despite efforts to cover it up, this assassination is actually one of the best documented CIA plots. Isn't that ironic? No, well, yes, it is. After his assassination, the US attempted to maintain the puppet government without him. However, democracy intervened in the 1962 election, which brought Juan Bosch, a socialist physician, to power. Bosch's administration faced significant challenges as the main mass organizations in the Dominican Republic had been either CIA fronts or hollowed out by CIA operations. His closest advisor, Sasha Volman, was a known CIA asset who undermined the main peasant organization, while the AFL-CIO created and shaped the main trade union. For those unaware, the AFL-CIO is a thoroughly toothless union organization, essentially run and created by the US government for anti-labor purposes. When Bosch attempted to implement modest agrarian reforms, the CIA stepped in to overthrow him too. The message is clear: either toe the line or hang from it. The assassination of Ernesto Che Guevara on October 9, 1967 was a coordinated effort between Bolivian forces.
Did y'all know that your United States government, your tax dollars, went to kill one of the greatest revolutionaries the Western Hemisphere has ever seen? Che Guevara? Did you know that your government was the machine behind one of the greatest forward-thinking men to ever touch this planet? Salute to the OG, Che Guevara. Let's go.
Forces and the CIA. Reports of his capture and execution show the CIA's advisory role, with several classified documents pointing to their involvement. They essentially provided intelligence and tactical support. Felix Rodriguez, a key CIA figure, had orders to keep Guevara alive due to his intelligence value, but political pressures forced him to comply with execution orders within Bolivia. Rodriguez instructed Bolivian Sergeant Mario Terán to shoot Guevara below the head to make it appear as if he had been killed in battle. Rodriguez's account claims he received a coded message ordering Che's death and instructed Terán to avoid shooting Guevara in the face to prevent evidence of an execution. At 1:10 p.m., Rodriguez noted the time as he heard the fatal shots. The death certificate indicated that Guevara's body arrived at the hospital Knights of Malta in Valle Grande, Bolivia, with multiple bullet wounds and subsequent bleeding in the thorax and extremities as the cause of death. The autopsy report detailed Guevara's physical characteristics, noting his brown curly hair, heavy curly beard and mustache, and the multiple bullet wounds. If you're interested in a deep dive about the entire assassination plot, as well as a review and breakdown of the very interesting medical autopsy by yours truly, check out our program series titled Autopsy Report, where I cover the health, death, and subsequent conspiracies of many historical figures, including Lenin and Guevara. The documentary evidence reveals that the US did everything in its power to eliminate Guevara and the guerrillas. The CIA and US Special Forces trained the Bolivian Ranger Battalion that captured him, paid for the operation, and directed the hunter-killer groups. General Avando may have ordered Guevara's murder, but the US pulled the trigger.
Want to jump back into some of this OWASP real quick. This is the Book of Judgment. Remember what you just did, what you just heard, right? And what you just seen. And let's see what the Creator has to say about this. Book of Judgment, 32, starting at 24. Nor will I anymore consider the prayers of any king, any queen, or any other ruler, or any nation, or people anywhere in the world who engage in war, offensive or defensive, or who aid or abet in war in any way whatsoever. Creator says, I'm not even hearing y'all. I won't even consider you. But I will abandon all such people, and my Lord shall abandon them, and my holy angel shall abandon them, and they shall be left as prey to their own harvest of evil spirits, and to all manner of jujas or low demonic spirits. And they shall be afflicted with, look, what? And they shall be afflicted with assassinations. It's a key symptom to the ills of your government. It's a way to know if your government is on point or off point. If they're truly, in fact, for the people, or are they set up against the people? It's as simple as, are they light or are they dark? Are you good or are you evil? And if you are assassinating people, not only will the Creator not listen to you, or he's, you know what I mean, about to pack it up on your whole nation. You dig what I'm talking about? And let you fend for yourself. But this is a key way to know that you already have major issues from the top down. And they shall be afflicted with assassinations, intriguers, and despoilers. Intriguers like Snowden. Despoilers. And with what? Anarchy, riots, and destruction. For they shall be made to understand that whomever the Creator created alive is sacred upon the earth, and that whoever does not heed these, my judgments, sins against the Almighty. Didn't they just kill Che Guevara? Didn't they kill Lumumba? Look at your government. It's sick.
Guatemalan President Jacobo Arbenz was taken out in 1954. In 1951, he had initiated reforms aimed at redistributing land from wealthy landowners, including the American-owned United Fruit Company, to the impoverished native laborers. These reforms, of course, annoyed U.S. officials, calling it dangerously socialist, which set the stage for the eventual intervention. The CIA, under orders from State Department officials, planned to forcibly remove Arbenz from power. This operation, known as PB Success, called for the usual economic and diplomatic pressure, political agitation, sabotage, and psychological operations to create the illusion of a spooky and unbeatable rebel force. The campaign's success depended on persuading, more likely intimidating, Guatemalan military officers to overthrow Arbenz. Agents skillfully manipulated these officers by creating a myth of a formidable opposition army led by Castillo Armas. The destruction of the Arbenz government triggered decades of terror, repression, and resulted in the deaths of approximately 200,000 Guatemalans. Incredibly, even after the coup, the CIA continued to undermine Arbenz through a disinformation campaign, confiscating and tampering with his personal papers in order to generate negative publicity. Arbenz was not killed by the CIA, but he would have been had he stayed. Thankfully, he managed exile before that. The next intro is in a similar boat. In 1951, Mohammed Mossadegh nationalized the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, leading to a conflict with Britain. The UK sought American help to overthrow him, and the CIA, led by Kermit Roosevelt, orchestrated a coup using local assets and paid protesters, eventually removing him. US and British oil companies controlled Iranian oil production and pricing, undermining nationalization, and supporting the subsequent dictatorship of the Shah. I've made a relevant video of this here, if you're interested. The US really liked assassinating Chilean political figures. Apparently, the murder of the military commander-in-chief and killing Allende and a military coup wasn't enough. Orlando Letelier, the former Chilean ambassador, was assassinated on September 21, 1976. Letelier, a former Chilean foreign minister who was also a leading critic of Pinochet's dictatorship, fled to the US after being tortured and imprisoned in Chile. His outspoken opposition to Pinochet's regime made him an obvious target of Operation Condor, a CIA campaign aimed at eliminating US political enemies across Latin America. The decision to assassinate him was reportedly made during the Bonao Conference in the Dominican Republic in mid-1976, orchestrated by Sasha Volman, the CIA member mentioned earlier. On July 30th, 1976, after a meeting between the CIA and the State Department, they decided to expand Operation Condor from mere intelligence gathering to active assassination plots, too. This assassination, carried out with a car bomb in Washington, D.C., claimed the lives of Letelier and his American aide, Ronnie Moffitt. The investigation into his murder revealed that the order for the assassination came directly from Pinochet or General Manuel Contreras, who was arrested for his involvement subsequently. Mariana Callejas, a civilian agent, became a key witness, revealing that those intimately connected to the plot had confessed but a calculated move to silence a vocal critic of a fascist dictatorship that the US directly supported. Despite the efforts to bring the perpetrators to justice by the US, the real culprits remained at large and unblemished. Don't you just love American freedom of speech? Thomas Sankara, president of Burkina Faso, was shot and killed on October 15, 1987. Sankara, a charismatic revolutionary leader in Burkina Faso, transformed the nation through radical policies that challenged international business interests. According to testimony, it was ordered by former Liberian President Charles Taylor with the support of French and American governments, and was executed by Sankara's longtime friend, Compaoré. Sankara's administration marked a significant departure from the norm in African politics at the time. He implemented sweeping reforms aimed at curbing corruption and promoting self-sufficiency. Lavish lifestyles of politicians funded by taxpayers was eradicated. Salary cuts were issued across the board, including for himself. Under Sankara's leadership, Burkina Faso saw remarkable progress in health, education, and environmental sustainability. The nation witnessed unprecedented mass vaccination campaigns, a significant reduction in infant mortality rates, doubled school attendance, and the planting of millions of trees to combat deforestation. Moreover, women's rights became a core component of his political ideology, enhancing educational opportunities for girls and integrating women into leadership roles. Despite, or more likely because of these achievements, Sankara ended up on the French and American hit lists. During a visit by French President François Mitterrand in 1986, Sankara confronted him with forceful anti-imperialist discourse, critiquing French colonial policies and U.S. interventions in global conflicts. Mitterrand acknowledged Sankara's qualities, but also labeled him as too forthright and troublesome. What a piece of shit. This confrontation likely hastened their desire to kill Sankara, with figures like Jacques Faucard, a key French intelligence operative, allegedly playing a role in the assassination plot. Make no mistake, the interests of U.S. and French business were the central reason for all this. Herman J. Cohen, a former U.S. Assistant Secretary of the State for African Affairs, admitted to accusing Sankara of regional destabilization and harming the image of the French community in West Africa, as if their neocolonialism didn't do enough of that already. So, on October 15, 1987, while Sankara was attending a meeting with his advisors, gunmen suddenly stormed into the building. Realizing he was the target, Sankara faced assailants and was shot multiple times, dying on the spot. All but one of his aides was also killed. The aftermath saw Compaoré rise to power, turning Burkina Faso back into a colony for international, but specifically European, capital. It took 35 years for Compaoré to be tried, convicted, and sentenced to life imprisonment in absentia for his role in the assassination. This brief dive into the CIA's assassination Rolodex just scratches the surface, and it covers only a few assassinations. There are even more overthrows of democratically elected governments, and yet even more general meddling covering practically every single nation over the past century. The lengths the US government will go to protect the interests of the ruling class are staggering but not surprising. If allowed to continue, they'll destroy their own nations and others, as they currently are doing, all those they exploit, and the whole world at the altar of capital. This most bestial existence, imperialism, and its unlimited crimes against humanity must be stopped. A better world is possible. That's all for this time. If you enjoy what I do, then please consider supporting me on Patreon. I'd like to thank my patrons, so thank you too. Nitro Dubs, Kenny, Thomas Roberts, Nicholas, Owen Baker, T. Wood, Dr. Lemonman, Lumix, Charles.
And that's just a drop in the bucket. All right? So it ain't going to be long. I just want to put this out there. This is the Book of Judgment, chapter 34. It says, do not lay the blame of anarchy and revolution and assassinations on the people. It ain't their fault. My judgment is against the government in all cases. These conditions of vengeance are only the fruit, They only the result from the government's divergence from the will of the Creator and the march of his life. See, for example, as the offspring of inharmonious parents or of parents wrapped in their selfishness are lower in grade than their predecessors, even so do the subjects of a king or a government or a president decline in grade in proportion to the prevention of liberty and the neglect of general instruction. Judgment is rendered against government where it does not provide liberty to the people and where it neglects providing means for the development of the talents created with their norm. In those respects, old man, governments are measured and graded by your God. And whenever a government sets itself up to enforce and strengthen itself by violence, against justice for the multitude, which is what every one of these assassinations were about. Every one of these men were crushed up under the capitalistic paw and big business eye teeth, the sharp, serrated teeth of capitalism ground them to nothing. In those respects, old man, governments are measured and graded by your God. And whenever a government sets itself up to enforce and strengthen itself by violence against justice for the multitude, behold, I turn away from that government. And I call away my lords and the holy angels. And with that, druges, demons, low vibratory humans come upon those people, and the people fall upon their government and destroy it. Message.
Create a gang is crazy. Boy, y'all better pay attention.
We fight as a single, impenetrable unit. That is the source of our strength.
And with that being said, I want you to breathe in, let that light in, because I'm Cosmon, and I'm out.
And oh yeah, put that Super 7 in the air. Tell me how you feel it when you feel it up there. When you in the sky breathing rarefied air. When you're breathing rarefied air, oh yeah. Put that Super 7 in the air. Tell me how you feeling when you feel it up there. When you in the sky breathing rarefied air. When you're breathing rarefied air, oh,
it's that Jehovih, that Chow Mein, that Papa Bull, that Tao Mein, since sun south in the arc of Wayne. My brain moving like Tao Sang, so ass above, it's so below. That up and that down thing, this flow is atmospherian. I call that a ground game. See, water is knowledge, so if I'm teaching, you're learning. So how your God make a sun without vortexing and current? See the pattern is ponic, I'm reaching out for my people. Oh, watch me flow through your speakers, you feel the force of the ether. And when the force gets the equal, I'm taking off like an eagle. Police popped the pastor yesterday for pushing Puerto. My DNA is Moshe. Mix that thing with higher water. My spirit rate is OTN, it's just a higher order. Got more light than Gavita. Rap a lot just like Tila. Went from sinner to saint. Shout out my big homie Sealer. Got more torque than a sports car. Got more work than a door star. And the 4 million I make, I'm giving the Dr. Umar, oh yeah.
Put that Super 7 in the air. Tell me how you feeling when you're feeling up there. When you in the sky breathing rarefied air. When you're breathing rarefied air, oh yeah. Put that Super 7 in the air. Tell me how you feeling when you feel it up there. When you in the sky breathing rarefied air. When you're breathing rarefied air, oh yeah.
Super 7 in my rites and ceremonies. I'm married to Jehovah, holy matrimony. Confucius say, in the words of Caillou, before you hit the tomb, be a bridegroom. Only got one question for Miss Susan B. On how to last Ahuin is now a Angui. Blame my inspiration, I'm just thinking thoughts. But in the way of God's, we gon' keep it short. Why Jesus wanna kill me, Matthew 10:34. Just a couple questions that I'm needing to know. Oh, watch me flow, it's so potent. Set the vortex in motion. Super 7, I'm floating across the Aegean Ocean. Oh, you a Muslim now, so I guess you making salat. Well, I'm an Israelite, I'ma make him at the Shabbat. Got Moses on the bumper, super slap off in my spaceship photosphere. So I stay lit, peace and light to the faith, it's oh yeah.
Put that Super 7 in the air. Tell me how you feeling when you're feeling up there. When you in the sky breathing rarefied air. When you're breathing rarefied air, oh yeah. Put that Super 7 in the air. Tell me how you feeling when you feeling